So in the previous section, we have seen how various foreign advisors and diplomats in Korea played a role during a very tumultuous time in the 1890s in Korea. So in the 1890s, there was the Sino-Japanese War that broke out, and Japan defeating China in that war, and the various the treaty that was signed as a result of it, and the triple intervention in order to adjust the treaty terms. This was also a time when the Kabul reform program was being carried out. We have cabinet changes in Korea, as well as the assassination of the Queen and Go Jong leaving the palace and taking refuge at the Russian legation. In this section, we are going to look at Korean attempts at self-strengthening. So because Korea's weaknesses had been exposed by this point, it was necessary for Korea to strengthen itself, to defend itself, but there were many different ideas on how that should take place. And so we're going to look at these different attempts in this section. One thing to think about as we go through this part of the lecture is to consider what is a nation and how do you define a nation in differentiation from other nations. This is an important question because this is precisely the question that Korea was dealing with in the late 19th century. In the last lecture, we took a look at Homer Hulbert, the American missionary in Korea, who established the Yugyeong-gongwon and taught English there from 1886. And so Hulbert was very active in Korea. In fact, he became very familiar with the Korean language and Korean culture, and was interested in translating as well as publishing various works. In 1889, Hulbert wrote the Saminpilchi, which was the first geography textbook in Hangul. But one thing that we need to understand about geography textbooks from this time period, and not just in Korea but in the United States, is that geography textbooks did not just teach the physical location of various countries, but they would also describe key characteristics and features of that country. So not only the topography and the climate, but also what the people were like, their customs, their language, the kind of food that they eat, the kind of clothes that they wear. So it was more encyclopedic than just geography. In 1896, Hulbert participated and contributed to the publishing of the Independence newspaper. He also worked with Ju Shigyong, who studied and systemized the grammar of Hangul. Now, this is very important because Hulbert's participation in the Independence newspaper showed that he supported Korean independence and Korea's efforts to maintain their sovereignty. His participation in the systemization of Hangul and its grammar shows that Hulbert was interested in standardizing the Korean language, in establishing Hangul as kind of official Korean, and also in helping to define what it meant to be Korean and Korean culture, because language is an incredibly important and essential aspect to culture. In 1905, when the Protectorate Treaty was forced upon Korea, he was very vocal about his stance against it. And as a special commissioner, he tried to deliver a secret letter from Kojong to the President of the United States, but was not successful in doing so. And then in 1906, he suggested to the king the dispatch of envoys to the Hague Convention so that the world could know about Kojong's protest of the Protectorate Treaty and of Japan's increasing control in Korea. Into the colonial period, Holbert continued his support of Korea and Koreans and their efforts to try to, at this point during the colonial period, regain independence. So we see from the outset that Holbert supported Korean independence, Korean sovereignty, and after Koreans lost their independence to Japan, continued with his support into the colonial period. Another individual for us to examine is Franz Eckert. So Eckert served at the Naval Band in Prussia. He was invited to the Japanese Imperial Navy as a foreign advisor in 1879. The next year in 1880, he edited the Japanese national anthem. And from 1883 to 1886, he served in the Japanese Ministry of Education and in the Imperial Japanese Army Military Band. In 1901, he was invited to Korea, where he organized and trained an orchestra and held regular concerts at Pagoda Park. In 1902, he edited the Korean Empire National Anthem and was the instructor of the military band. So again, as an effort on the part of the Koreans to define Korea and what it means to be Korean, there are various symbols that are associated with the Korean nation, and one of those is the national anthem. And so Franz Eckert was instrumental in, no pun intended, but instrumental in developing the Korean national anthem. Other attempts to try to define this Korea was in terms of the language, as we see in the Independence newspaper, which was printed entirely in Hangul, and Hangul, which is native Korean. It was invented by the Korean King Sejong, and it was invented specifically so that anybody could learn it, and it was not so difficult and obtuse like classical Chinese. So this starts to become a symbol and representative of the Korean language. This is also the time where the Korean national flag is developed. And other aspects that went into defining Korea include things such as Korean architecture or Korean clothing, the hanbok. So all of these are at this time being used to define Korean culture.